give us a sense of the scale of what you do now. I mentioned before that you've got dozens of companies. I mean, just in a nutshell, how many businesses are you currently involved in? How many people have you got working for you?
Oh, wow. Well, I think we've got, I looked today because I thought you might ask me something along those lines. I think currently we have 49 companies, but we have about 70 odd projects. Some of these projects are inside one individual company and some are individual businesses of their own. And I mean, employees, we tend to work with people rather than employ people. Although it's the same thing.
But working around among those 49 businesses.
A lot.
Yeah.
In one business alone, over 500.
Yeah,
a lot. We're currently working down in Brazil on a major project. I'm working with a very close friend and partner. We're working on a project down there that the project itself, the value will be about 1.5 billion US dollars, not pounds. So maybe 900 million pounds. And that needs a capital injection of probably 300 or 400 million, which will come from a syndicate of us.
So suffice to say, that little boy has gone quite a long way.
Well, we get involved in not all the businesses are big though. I mean, a lot of what we do. I love starting new businesses, and we look at all sorts of things that come out the woodwork. You know, there's some great small business. Some businesses aren't designed to grow into big empires. They're just smaller lifestyle businesses that may service a family, you know, and earn enough money for a family.
Let's go back to the first one. What were you doing in that public phone box, and how come that led to a business? Give us that story.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that all started because of me reading the Financial Times. I was probably 14 or 15 at the time, and I used to do anything to make money, paper rounds, wood chopping, gardening, selling things door to door. I used to make, I'd got this great idea of thread pictures. Used to get this design from W.H. Smith's, and you put all these tacks in a board, and you could design this thing and make these pictures. And I used to have guys making this in a tool shed, and then I'd go around door to door, knocking on people's doors, flogging them. So that was sort of there, and then I moved on from that when I was reading the Financial Times, because I was delivering it to someone posh, and I thought, I used to read it, you know, I used to try and read it all with a felt tip pen and mark it out as I would go through. And I read an article about, you've got to remember where this was. It was probably 1967, 68, that sort of time. And it was before we joined the EEC, which is now the EU, of course, but the common market as was then. And there was an article about coming in on ovens, cleaning ovens when they're hot. And that there would be possible new regulations coming in, and you'd have, these big companies would have to clean these ovens, bakeries. I've got a good friend of mine in the audience tonight who is a baker, so he'll relate to this. But cleaning them, cooling these ovens down, it was old-fashioned really, and cleaning them when they were hot. And this thing was about that. And so I thought, didn't think much more of it really, and got on. But I was an avid reader of a magazine called The Exchange and Mart. A lot of people here might remember that. I don't think it's really out there today, but it was. And so I would take The Exchange and Mart to my office, which before the phone box was the toilet. And I'd sit, because one of the reasons was my dad never realised that I had 150 watt bulbs. It was nice and light in there, and I could read and quiet. So it was a great place, you know, you could sit there and read, it was lovely. And so I would read The Exchange and Mart, and there was an ad in there, and the ad said, it was a small ad with a cartoon of this sort of lady saying, cleaning an oven, and it said, clean your oven when it's hot. It was a domestic oven. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. If it'll clean domestic ovens, why won't it clean commercial ovens? Surely all you would need is more fluid.
More of it.
So I thought, well, you just need more fluid. So I thought, that's a great idea. So, you know, sitting there on the loo, and I thought, right, that's it. I'm gonna contact these people. And then it dawned on me that there was an address in the US. It was in New Jersey, and a phone number. I didn't realise, but these guys that own this fluid had, or owned the formula, had basically put an ad in as a test ad to see if there was anyone that might pick this up. Well, what they didn't reckon on was a 14-and-a-half, 15-year-old kid sitting on a toilet picking it up, because that's what happened. And so I thought, it's in America. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was a kid on a council estate. I mean, for me, America was Ironside, which was a detective series with a guy in a wheelchair. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I realised that not all Americans have wheelchairs. And so anyway, I read this, and I thought, well, I don't know, how the hell do I ring America? So I thought, in the end, well, there's a phone box at the end of our street, and I'll go up and see how it works. I'd never used a phone, because my dad didn't have a phone, my mum didn't have a phone, they didn't have a fridge, they didn't have a car. Well, I think we did get a carpet at some stage later on, but at that stage we really didn't even have that. So I wandered up the phone box and sort of had a look in the phone box and thought, right, I'll go in. And in those days you had an A and a B button for STD calls. Yeah. And although younger people might not remember, but you used to ring, you'd go on the phone and it was an STD call, and even if you were ringing London from Reading in those days, it was considered long distance. And you would, I mean, really, it's not that long ago, but it really was. And you'd go and you ring the operator, and then they brought this special thing in where you could press a button and you didn't need to speak to an operator, but you could ring the operator. And I rang the operator and I said I wanted to ring America, and could she tell me how many coins I would need? And it was a little bit lucky, because I got through to a lady called Joyce, and we sort of had a chat, and she sort of told me more or less what I would need. And I remember at the time I had some 10-bob notes, 10-shilling notes, which are like 50p in paper form for those people that might be on the web age 6 watching this. And I went up to the co-op and changed this money up to coins and went back to the phone box. And she told me I could ring her and ask for her by name at the exchange. I mean, you'd never do this today, would you? But anyway. Yeah. And I did, and I had all these coins all piled up. Well, when I got back to the phone box, there was a lady in a blue Mac in there, I can remember that. And she seemed in there for ages, and I was desperate to ring these people in America, thinking I was going to get this fluid. And in the end, I got into the phone box, and I had the coins, and I rang Joyce, and she answered. She didn't answer. In the end, they found her, put her onto me. And I had a chat with her, and she said, how old are you? And I said, why? And she said, how old are you? And I said, 15. And she said, and you want to ring America? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, right, what's it about? And I told her what it was about. And she said, look, I'll tell you what, I'll ring them. I said, but they'll know when I put coins in that all these coins are dropping in. They're going to know I'm ringing from a phone box. And she said, no, I can get over that. You can put the coins in. I can then put you through, and I'll interrupt you before it runs out and tell you it's going to run out. And they'll think I'm your secretary. I mean, she was just absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I mean, absolutely brilliant. We remained friends until she...
And you stayed in touch until she died?
Stayed in touch until she died. Yeah, I went to her. She was lovely. And so that's what we did. And she rang this guy. I rang the guy, and she put me through. And I got chatting to this guy in New Jersey called Barry. And he said, we got chatting, and I said, look, if you send me... I was naive, and I didn't know. And I said, look, if you send me over how to make the fluid, I'll make it in the UK, and then, we can come to... He said, you really think I'm going to send you the formula for my fluid? I said, well, yeah. He said, well, I'm not. I said, well, how am I going to make it if I don't? He said, well, you're not going to make it because I'm not sending it to you. And these calls went on for ages. I used to ring him up and say, please, can we do this? And I can do that. And I thought the best way is don't mention the fluid. So I used to ring him up and just have a chat about America and all that. And, he never ever asked me for ages. And years later, him and his brother knew how old I was, and it was a bit of a joke. And so we had this. In the end, he said, look, why would I send you the formula? And I said, I promise you, if you send me the formula, I will pay you whatever we agree. And I will do it. I said, why did you put the ad in? If you don't want... I said, well, you put the ad in, you want the distributor. I'm your distributor. So he said, I don't know that I actually said distributor. I think I'm sort of salesman, I used the terminology. But anyway, we agreed. In the end, he gave up and sent me the formula by airmail. And it was really quite simple. And these days, I've got a friend of mine in the audience tonight who runs quite a big chemical business, which he's growing with his partner called Duomax, which is quite an innovative product. And but in those days, this was, I suppose these days you'd never get it past any of the regulations, but in those days we did.
But it was the beginning of your, business career, and it made you enough money to kick on and then set up other businesses. It's interesting seeing even turning around, seeing on Twitter, lots of comments about entrepreneurs being born or made. I mean, you were definitely a born entrepreneur. To have the guts, let's say, to pick up that phone and start haggling as a 15-year-old.
Well, I don't know. I think probably I was a born pain in the neck. I mean, I used to just be into everything all the time. I mean, you've got to bear in mind. I've got my kids are here today, and my family are here, and they will tell you. I mean, the first time it's sort of in our family legend because I ran away from home. The first time I ran away from home, I was a frequent, and that's not to be advised by anyone. I was under 3, 2.5, and I was gone for 24 hours. And I was found in a bush on Horfield Common by a lady that owned this house. What happened is I'd left I got out the garden and I disappeared, and I'd wandered onto a bus stop, and there were these people getting on the bus, and two or three families, and I sort of thought, well, I'll just mingle in with them. I can't, and I did, and I got on the bus, and I suppose one family thought I was with them, and another one thought, and everyone thought I was someone else's kid, which is probably still the same these days. But so I got on the bus, and I ended up on this bus, and I got off on a place in Bristol called Horfield Common, which anyone from Bristol will know very well, anyone on the webcast or whatever. And I got off the bus with them. This particular family got off, and I got off. And then they went off because I wasn't anything to do with them. They didn't. And this lot would have thought I was to do with them. Somehow or other, I ended up playing with a load of kids in a park on Horfield Common. And my son and I recently built quite a major care home about 100 yards from where I was found in the bush, so we were quite pleased about that. And it was, he used to say to me about being 2 in the bush, 1 in the hand and 2 in the bush. And I said I wasn't, well, I was 1 in the bush and 2 in the hand.
Yeah.
So I ended up in this situation in this bush and asleep, and I was found 24 hours later by the police, and they took me back to where we lived, and I remember them giving me a lovely bar of chocolate, 5 boys' chocolates. So I ended up back there. So I was doing this all the time, so it was a bit of a nightmare.
So it's not necessarily entrepreneurialism. It's just a rebellious streak. It's a bit of a wild streak. It's something that you were born with that's led you into a business career.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it's interest. I just love projects, and I like people, and I like dealing, and I like helping people, to be quite honest with you. And I think communication, if you communicate with people, it doesn't matter who they are, if you can identify with people, then people really want to do things. And we work with lots of people, and we work together on projects. I'm not a great advocate of shouting at people just to try and get things done and telling them to, go off and sell soap and come back with loads of money, and if you don't sell the soap, you're an idiot, because if that was the case, I was definitely an idiot, because we didn't always sell the soap. So that's where my business started, and Easy Clean did produce money. It did produce me with a cash flow eventually. We made the formula up in a tool shed on the council estate where I lived, and I enlisted the help of anyone I could get. In fact, it's often been said that they were all kids. They weren't. I had an old boy that was retired. He was about 70-odd and didn't have anything to do. So I used to pay him, in those days, what I considered the minimum wage. But I don't know what that was. And he would help. And, I sort of made him the sort of boss. And then I had kids. We mixed all this stuff up. But the worst thing was I had to sell it. And any of people that are starting new businesses come across this, I'm sure. I then had to sell it. But I was a 15-year-old kid with a sort of pretend moustache, trying to sort of pretend I was a lot older. And I decided I would go and see Hovis. I went and read about who Hovis were, and I used to read the papers, so I realised all this. And I went to see Hovis, and I got the bus. I got myself a sort of briefcase that was probably plastic, And I went to get some business cards printed, and a lot of people will identify with this as well.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to get it, the state right, you know, to go and see. So I thought, well, I'll get some business cards printed, and so I did, and I went to the printers, and I had Stephen Fear, chairman. And I remember this guy looking at me in the printers and thinking, this is a kid. I thought, chairman. So I went out and I sort of wandered off with this thing, and I thought, this is all right, I'm a chairman. You know. And then I decided I ought to be a bit more American because it was American product. So I went back and got some more printed called President. And then I decided that was a bit too, like, I didn't really look like, I looked in the mirror with a big knotted tie on, you know, and looking like this with the lapels, and I thought, you don't look like a chairman or a president. So in the end, I came up on this thing, I called myself trainee salesman, because I thought it was more real. I was going to go and see Hovis. They weren't going to believe I was a chairman. They were never going to believe I was a president. They might believe I was a trainee salesman.
Yeah.
So I put trainee salesman on there, and off I go to Hovis with a plastic briefcase and some sample of what I had and some paperwork that I managed to print off. And off I went, and I went in and sort of in the briefcase, and this lady in the posh reception in this, where they were baking in this factory. And 30 seconds later, I was back out on the wall. You know, she didn't want to know out. You know, some kid gone in there with a sort of like a sparse moustache in the hope that I was going to. And I didn't. Anyway, she said, that's it, no. So out I go. So I'm sitting on the wall. And then two guys came out, and they were chatting and smoking. In those days, you could smoke where you wanted, but they were chatting and smoking outside. And I sort of listened, drinking Tizer, because I used to be a big Tizer drinker. So I was drinking this Tizer, thinking, listening to these guys, and they're there, and I listened to one, and I thought he was the boss. So I went, I thought, oh, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I get the briefcase, and off I go, and I go over and said, is there any, I said, excuse me, and they sort of said, yeah, he was quite a nice guy, actually. Yeah. And I said, look, I'm really sorry about this, but I'm a trainee salesman for this new, for this company, Easy Clean. And he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, I've got a new product that we're demonstrating. I said, problem is I've only just got the job, and if I don't demonstrate it to somebody, I'm going to lose the job. And he said, I said, I'm not trying to sell it to you, but will you let me demonstrate it? Because if you'll let me demonstrate it, and you can sign my form to say that you've done it, then I can go back and say, at least I've made a presentation today. So he said, oh, come on in then, let's have a go. And I went in, and somehow we sort of got, and he said it works, and I said, yeah, it does work. And we started cleaning this oven in the outside reception, and I'm sort of, I thought, if this doesn't work, I'm in big trouble. And it worked. And then he said, yeah, that works, and we'll do a bigger trial.
Right.
And that progressed to me for years I was then graduated to being salesman, and I never, ever put chairman. And there's one thing I would say to people, don't worry about titles. It's whether you actually can deliver. And this product did deliver. It did do what it said on the tin. Yeah. It wasn't, it did do what it said on the tin. And it's important that. And I managed to get some work with them and with other people. And I developed Easy Clean into a bigger business, and we cleaned hotels and supermarkets. I did manage to let this floor scrubbing machine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the early days of Gateway, I did manage to let one of those go and knock all their supermarket to bits, because it just went off on its own with soap. The soap went, the peas went, the beans went. It was unbelievable.
But it's really interesting, because we had a question on Twitter from somebody called Danny Puresh, running a disability equality practice, and he's having a lot of trouble getting into large customers. He says he's tried telephone, personal visits, but he can't get a foot in the door. Please, can you advise what would be the best approach to gain a contract in these companies? Now, you've talked about it a bit there with your first experiences, but with a small business, that's a really common problem,
it's very, very difficult. What is that business again? Can you
it's a disability equality practice. We currently serve a niche market, so our customer base is very small. We have tried to market to larger companies, especially FTSE 100 organisations. So far, we have not been able to get a foot in the door.
Yeah, very difficult. Big businesses, supermarkets, Sainsbury's, Boots, all the big businesses are very difficult. The buyers are absolutely inundated by everyone.
Yeah.
And this is one of the problems that this guy has, is getting in. I'm a great believer in guerrilla marketing. And by that, I mean that, as long as you're doing no one any harm, and as long as you're prepared to have a door slammed in your face, approach anyone. I once got into a business because I tracked down the guy that I thought would, in a sports club, playing squash. Mm-hmm. And I approached him there.
Right.
And that led to quite a big contract that we were doing at the time. And one of the problems that there is when you go to buyers, they're inundated with people trying to sell them things all the time. Imagine, everyone wants to get stuff into Sainsbury's. So I think in his case, what I would do is I would look at his target market totally, focus on all the people that he thinks he should approach.
Could be a customer. Yeah.
Could be a customer, and get the definite names of the people that are able to make a decision. Because it's very important to present only to people that will make a decision. So if you're going into something, if I were going in there, one thing you've got to focus on, if you want to get, if you go in and you see a receptionist, you don't want to sell her anything or him. You want to sell. You want an appointment to meet the person that matters. So the only sales thing you need to sell him or her on the reception is an appointment with the person that is going to make the decision. Yeah. Don't try selling them anything else. No, sure. So if they make a list of everyone and then approach them on that basis, that would be my first off answer.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a tough one. Isn't
it's
it?
a tough one because buyers are tough in the big multinationals or big nationals.
Sure. I mean, these days, businesses like Danny's are benefited a little bit. Like, you can look online, things like LinkedIn. I don't know whether you're a LinkedIn user, but you can at least identify, you can get the name of that person that you want to try and get through to.
I think LinkedIn is great. I'm linked out, I'm afraid. But I think I'm not, But
there are ways to identify who that customer is.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I think what you've got to do is identify the customer that really it matters, that is the customer. Make sure they are the customer. Don't waste lots of time trying to sell to people that aren't able to make the decision. Yeah. Because if they're not able to make the decision, you'll go on forever. Yeah. And don't be ram-ragged. Be proud of the product you've got and present it. But if it works, and obviously, if it works and it's proper and it does what it says on the tin, it's very important not to, if it's got to do it, it's got to do it. Yeah. And then you can be proud of it. And approach anybody with it. Sure. If it works, you're proud of it. Yeah. Approach them with it.
Now, Stephen, you've been so honest, and I can even see that coming through on Twitter, so sort of frank about your early life and the things that you've done. When we talked before this evening, and we'll keep this brief because I know we want to invite Mandy Haberman up on stage, but when we were talking the other day, you were talking about mistakes and milestones in your career, and I can't resist but ask you about what you did when you were offered a business opportunity by Diana Ross's husband.
Oh, yeah, well, this is a long story, really. But
keep it brief for me.
I'll keep it short. For quite some time, I was in business with a guy called Arne Ness, who unfortunately has passed on now, but he famously married Diana Ross. And we discussed a business transaction once, which was about moving bananas through the Gulf War on ships. He was in the shipping business. And he said, there's a long discussion went on about we can put it on here and we'll make all this money because there were no bananas in Europe at the time and you couldn't get bananas. And we'd make loads of money. And there was a couple of rust bucket ships up in Kingston upon Hull that he decided, at the time, it was decided that you buy these ships, 5 million quid, we can buy these ships. We can sail them with Filipino crew and a Chinese captain under a Liberian flag and go across the Gulf and do this, and we'd make loads of money. He was a great guy and a very successful entrepreneur. Famously put the most amount of men on Everest in 1985, after which he met Diana. And what happened, he said, I said, never going to work in a million years. I mean, you're going to sail you're going to get bombed. And anyway, he did. I didn't do it, and he made 60 million in 6 weeks. So someone said to me the other day, how do you always get things right? And there's someone standing behind me, because you don't always get things right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't. And I didn't get that one right, that's for sure.